My name is Greg Babor. I'm the editor of Agent MX-Z3RO. I've been cutting for about 8 or 9 years. I'm an ACE assistant member, and I've worked on, I was an assistant for many years, but I've worked cutting on film, cut on Final Cut Pro, Avid, Premiere, pretty much on everything. Well, the biggest thing is just organization, which I think a lot of editors know that the reason they hire assistants and what makes good assistants is organizational skills, and because you need to know where all your footage is and what you have. Because a lot of times, especially on lower budget or independent films, people just tend to shoot and they don't think about the post process, and they're just like, well, we'll deal with that later, and so you just tend to get mounds and mounds of footage. And you just got to break it up, put it into the correct scenes, and in Avid, put it in the bins, and make sure you can access it quickly. And the other advantage to editors or assistants is that it helps you learn the footage too, because in the old days of film, you'd actually have a daily screening, and you'd sit there with the director and write down which takes they like, and you'd discuss the dailies. Whereas those days they don't seem to be around that much anymore, especially in the independent world and lower budget stuff. So so the only chance you get to watch all the footage, it used to be when it was going in on tape, but now the tape is essentially gone. The only real chance to watch the footage is, for an assistant, is to when you're putting it in and logging it and organizing it. And then if your editor doesn't do that, then the editor has to watch it all once the bins are created. Either way, you need to have that organization. So that's the first thing that I had to do. I was able to work on Avid on a laptop in order to organize everything, because it'd be a waste for me to come in every day just to organize when I could do it pretty quickly at home on a laptop. And then all I did was I saved that project and transferred the bins over to here, because we had mirrored media. Basically, we had the same media on the same drive here at Avid, and the media I had on the laptop was identical. So I just copied over the bins and reopened the project, and it was done. So I had an entire organized project pretty quickly. One of the things I did was after I organized everything then it was time to do the first assembly based on the script. Just edit it according to what they shot as scripted and assemble the whole thing together. And that I did on the laptop too at home. And actually what I did was I kind of set up my own little mini system. I put the laptop on a couple books, and I had a separate keyboard, because it's just easier to use an external keyboard. And I pretty much, I think I cut the whole first assembly at home. And then I brought it in here, and the first kind of screening we had was of everything that I'd cut at home. And I did everything with because I had my own sound effects library and imported those sound effects and did all that stuff. And so then when we came here, and I think within a couple days, I had to polish up a few things and I think finish the last scene here. But we were pretty much cutting the director's cut within 2 or 3 days after I had cut everything at home. The one card sequence was still difficult, because in the script it was very, it just said montage where people play cards. That was it. So it was like, well, how do you get this across? And so, I think that, but we knew Brian said he wanted some sort of, montage with windows and stuff like that. So we did that. And yeah, that whole sequence was assembled, and it didn't change that much, into the director's cut. And it's essentially, that's what was cut on the laptop. Another thing during the organizational process, the other thing I did was group clips together. And sometimes I even had to sync some audio to some of the clips, because for some reason there wasn't audio there, or for whatever reason it needed to be resung. So I resung some audio and I grouped the clips together. In doing so, it's one of those editing tools, multicam editing, that just makes it a lot easier. Rather than clicking through every clip at once, you just hit the up and down arrow, and you can see the different views, or watch them all, do the 4 cutout and see all the multicams run at once. So, and I did that because it has to do with speed and accessibility. I would say the multicam was most used during the titled sequence dance number, and that's where it's, at least in my experience, where it's mostly used, because you have a dance number, and it's like, well, you want to get a different angle, and sometimes what we would do is we would take those 2 cameras and stack them on top of each other, all 5 takes with 2 cameras apiece on top of each other so we could look through them all very quickly, because sometimes we'd have a roaming B camera and we wouldn't know what they would get. So you stack them all on top and you edit with the multicam, and it works great. And that's what that was another big problem. I mean, that sequence is a lot easier to cut because of multicam. I mean, I think doing it without it would take a lot longer. There was a situation, in the green screen where that day of shooting, apparently they were rushed or there were some problems and they didn't get a close-up of the lead actor, during that particular moment. And in order we had to kind of create one by taking one actor out of a green screen shot and moving it around and in a way kind of manufacture this close-up, which happens quite a bit. And oftentimes, especially in the new digital world of, digital filmmaking, you often push in on shots or move them slightly in order to recompose them, because sometimes they're even shot kind of loosely because they know they're going to recompose them later. So in a way, the editing world is what used to be just a matter of making making some cuts here and there and putting images together, is now a matter of recomposing images and manufacturing stuff that simply wasn't shot at all. And that's what we ended up doing, I would say, quite a bit, actually. I mean, there's the opening shot we reversed because we wanted to make it a pull out instead of a push in, and then there's the close-ups in the end that we had to manufacture because there were none. And then there's even time, I mean, there's old editing tricks of when you want a character to stare longer, so, you rock the picture back and forth to make them stare longer, and those are things you do to create the moments that you didn't quite get for whatever reason. I mean, it may be that it was never intended to get that. It wasn't scripted to have him look for that long, but it's like you want to create more of a moment out of it, so you rock the eyes back and forth, and then he stares longer, that type of thing.
Never forgets.
Player 3.
When constructing that montage, whenever I do a montage, you always book it. You're like, okay, here's the start, here's the end. How do I fill it together? It's like, again, building a puzzle. You build the border first, and then you fill it in the rest. So it's like when you find your out point and you have your in point, then it's easier to construct the rest. And I need an out point for the montage, there wasn't one scripted because it just said montage, card game. So when I saw him throw the girl's arm off and he said,
I believe it's time for you to leave, my love. We're done with silly distractions.
That's your out. Because he's tired of her, he's tired of all the distractions, and we got a bunch of crazy windows going on. And I said, it's kind of a double meaning, it's comical. But I said, more importantly, it ends our montage because I wanted some better out than simply, the cards deal again, because why else would you stop? So that was a happy accident. So if I were talking to a young filmmaker or a director, especially, I mean, from an editorial standpoint, we always want it not only is cover everything, and it's better to have more coverage than not enough, but it's sometimes you make camera cuts, like you only want certain lines covered in a close-up or something, but you always need the handles, it's like cover some lines before and after the line that you want in the close-up, just to make sure you got enough. And it's like enters and exits, always be sure and get people entering and exit the frame. No matter what scene you have, it's better if they exit and enter, because so many times I've seen people where they enter, like they have a wide and they have the guy, 2 people walk in and they talk to each other and then they leave in the wide. But then when you go to the close-up and it's just them standing there, and they're only covering the point where they're talking. It's like, no, have them enter the close-up and talk. Do the entire action, basically. Do the entire scene in both close, wide, medium, whatever, because otherwise it becomes more difficult. Editing is where people really find the story, I mean, you have because things work great on paper sometimes, when you're reading them, but then when you actually see them happen, they don't quite work the same way. And so it's just a matter of, some of your lines have to be dropped, and when you first get rid of them, you miss them. I mean, I don't know, in all the movies I've worked on, I don't know of any, there's never been one where it hasn't changed, at least from an editorial standpoint in terms of dialogue and stuff like that. It hasn't changed a good deal. Now, that doesn't mean it's entirely rewritten, but it means that entire lines are lifted. Sometimes characters are lifted. Sometimes, I mean, you know, basically the script they often say that the script you have it's a roadmap or like a framework. And I think there's the Ace editor, Jack Tucker, you know, always said it's the final rewrite of the script, and it is. Because this is the point where even though you have a script and you think this is what I'm shooting, you know, it never remains. I mean, it doesn't. It just, I mean, I know everyone thinks, you know, hey, I am sure you're a fantastic writer. There's a lot of great writers out there, but I would be really surprised if they all haven't had at least a couple lines lifted every now and again. It's a different medium. Reading a script is not the same as seeing it. It's that simple. There's two different mediums, and so you got to make it work for the medium of film. And be sure and walk away every once in a while. Get your eyes off of the image. Because, well, no, the main thing is to keep trying looking at it with fresh eyes. Like even today when we were working, that's when it occurred to me when we were doing that text situation. It's like you know, it said mission, or I think at first we just had get Gemini or whatever it was, and it was like, well, we don't know who Gemini is. Who is it? I mean, like, yes, I know now because I've seen the movie many, many times, but if you're seeing it for the first time, we're not going to know who's Gemini, you know. So we had to kind of clarify that a little bit more. The funny thing is that much like directors and producers and stuff, you know, editors get attached to the footage too. You know, and we have our own certain ways of how we perceive it should play out. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's always it's just a different opinion. I mean, a lot of people, in ways, there's certain things that are subjective. And there's battles that I lost on this, and there's battles that I won. You know, I mean, but it's kind of, you know, I mean, it's happened before where even though I think that something may work better another way, it doesn't mean that it really does. I mean, and again, the ultimate person to make the deciding factor is the audience, and that's why, you know, during test screenings and stuff like that, if audience likes something that I'm not too happy with, then it stays. I mean, you know, I mean, we're not making the movie. Another thing for independent filmmakers is that as much as it's your movie, as soon as it's done, it's the audience's movie. So it's like you're not making it for yourself. You can make your own movies and watch them, you know, all day long if you want, but that's not. You don't want to make movies for yourself. You want to make them for other people to enjoy. And so that's what we're all trying to do in editing is we're all trying to get in our pieces, but at the end of the day, we're slaves to the audience. I mean, that's what it comes down to.